Welcome to the Candidate Forum for San Luis Obispo County District 2 Supervisor. Our candidates tonight are Mr. Jeff Oslin, Mr. Bruce Gibson, Dr. Bruce Jones, and Mr. John Whitworth. Thank you, gentlemen, for participating tonight. I know you all have jobs and you're campaigning, and this is really a great opportunity to do some outreach to your constituents. This forum is sponsored by the Cambria Chamber of Commerce and is facilitated by the League of Women Voters. My name is Shelly Higginbotham, and I will moderate tonight's forum. Janice Langley and Dave Humphrey are our Zoom managers, and Ann Quinn is our timer. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. Tonight's questions were submitted by the Cambria Chamber membership, with League volunteers Janice Carr and Valerie Stenson organizing and sorting the question. Our panelists will have a 2-minute opening statement, and each candidate will then have 1.5 minutes to answer the questions submitted, and I will rotate the order of the questions. If time permits, we will have each candidate in reverse order make a 1-minute closing statement. So we'll start with the opening statements, and that will be you, Mr. Oslin. You're up first.
Great, thank you for hosting this. My name is Jeff Oslin. I grew up here on the Central Coast. I'm a graduate of Morro Bay High School. I did attend Cuesta and Cal Poly. Been on the Central Coast for approximately 40 years. I live in Atascadero currently. I'm a small business owner. I've had 27 years of success in San Luis County with my businesses. I own Glenn's Repair in Atascadero currently right now. We have some crossroads in our county, and that's why I've chosen to run for District 2 Supervisor. I think that we should not have career politicians. And after 16 years, I think it's time for change. That's one of the reasons I am running. I also can make our government more efficient with less duplication. I've seen it in business a lot where we have duplication of the same folks coming in for regulation, whether it's weights and measurements or whether it's bad timing for environmental health. So it's time to run the county more like an efficient business and be more customer service oriented for our residents. As a supervisor, you have to represent the district that you are elected to first and the county as a whole. I think I'm the person that can do that quite well. I understand the coast because I grew up on the coast. I understand agriculture. I did spend a lot of my youth on an apple farm where we did have animals and livestock. So we have to be more diverse in this community. We need things like a spaceport. We need broadband internet. We need to be efficient within the county. And of course, I do know Atascadero, and my endorsements on my website speak for it. Thank you.
Mr. Oslin. Mr. Gibson.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you for organizing this. I'm Bruce Gibson. I am the incumbent supervisor in District 2, proud to represent the communities of San Simeon, Cambria, Cayucas, Atascadero, San Miguel, and the areas around Lake Nacimiento and all the beautiful wine country in between. I'm ready to continue to lead this county in particularly challenging times we haven't seen for many, many years, and perhaps even in generations. We know the issues in front of us. We have homelessness, we have the high cost of housing, we have the economic recovery that we need to spur coming out of the pandemic. And all of these things press heavily upon government and upon our communities. We also are in a time of unprecedented opportunity as the relief funding that the federal government in particular is providing and the unprecedented surplus in the state budget are now finally providing the kinds of resources that counties need to get the job done for their communities. So we can make progress on homelessness. We can make progress on next generation housing, on strengthening childcare for young families, and on many more issues. I've been working at the state level on high-speed broadband, and that's coming as well. You know, Mr. Oslin's comment about career politicians seems he's arguing for inexperience as a job quality. I would argue exactly the opposite. My long experience in this office gives me a depth of knowledge about county government and a set of relationships, both at the local level here and at the state level and the federal level, that's going to be key to getting this job done, along with a demonstrated ability of accomplishments on many projects that I'm sure we'll be touching on tonight, and a commitment to financial responsibility that will be key.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Dr. Jones.
I'm Dr. Bruce Jones, the only candidate in District 2 Supervisor race that's endorsed by the Republican Party of SLO County and the Republican Party of the state of California. I'm not a career politician. I'm a retired orthopedic surgeon. My life experience have prepared me well to be a supervisor. Serving the last 3 years on the Templeton Area Advisory Group, chairman for the 2 of those years, has given me an opportunity to talk to homeowners, business owners, ranchers, and farmers about their concerns. I understand the issues facing our county. TAKE has also given me experience dealing with county ordinances and procedures. As a member of the board of a nonprofit hospital that served a population larger than the total population of our county, I evaluated solutions for medical care for that community and made budget decisions for an organization that employed more people than our county government. These experiences together have prepared me well to be an effective supervisor from day one. As a physician on the Board of Supervisors, I will be able to ask the appropriate questions and interpret data presented by the health department. Now that the Board of Supervisors once again has emergency authority over healthcare issues, my input will be essential. I am Dr. Bruce Jones, the right Bruce for District 2 Supervisor. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. Mr. Whitworth. Okay, great. Thank
Colonel
you.
John Whitworth, United States Marine Corps, retired, 22-year small business owner in Atascadero. I hold a master's degree in educational administration from the University of California, Santa Barbara. I'm also a licensed California building contractor, make me familiar with how things are built and how they, what it takes to go through the planning process. 30 years United States Marine Corps, 1 year as a combat medevac helicopter pilot, Vietnam, where I received the Distinguished Flying Cross for plucking a 9-man platoon that was surrounded by enemy forces, 3,000 hours of helicopter time, 3 years commanding officer of a Marine Corps squadron in El Toro. And I feel that my experiences as a proven leader, those are some that I feel are very important. My community service, I've been a big brother, a hospice volunteer, Toys for Tots volunteer. I helped the Kiwanis Club establish a little over a year ago a graffiti cleanup club, a graffiti program that is currently in force, and beautiful Atascadero is staying more beautiful because of the very efficient job that I helped start and they are continuing to do today. I'm a major contributor to Mighty Oaks program Suicide Prevention for Veterans. I've been to all their graduations, and having been a combat veteran, I understand what they go through and what their feelings are and how difficult it is for them to get back in the community.
30
My
seconds.
core values, I'm a constitutional conservative, which means common sense solutions, spend money wisely, fewer regulations, and I'm dedicated to keeping our water in San Luis Obispo County. And so as your District 2 supervisor, I feel that I bring many qualifications, leadership skills, and I feel very, very strongly about how we can work together as a board.
Thank you, Mr.
And the
Whitworth.
divisiveness that we have in many of the cases, I would strive to that we all work together as a common goal, not looking back at what somebody's done in the past, but what we can do in the future
Thank you.
to make this county the county that it should be.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Whitworth. So now we're going to move on to the questions that were submitted by the chamber membership. You'll have a minute and a half to answer them. And Mr. Gibson, you'll be up first. So the first question is, do you support the creation of an independent Citizens Redistricting Commission to determine district lines following the 2030 census? If not, why or why not?
I absolutely do support the creation of an independent redistricting commission, and it was actually my idea that was brought forward at our last board meeting. It speaks directly to the concerns that so many folks in this county have had watching the current board majority gerrymander our supervisorial districts. The most radical redrawing of district boundaries that I would submit this county has ever seen. There's a fundamental principle that voters should choose their elected officials, not the other way around. And what happened there was clearly an effort by the board majority to favor the Republican Party. And in doing so, they broke up at least 3 different communities of interest that I can think of off the top of my head. The matter of that map is now in court, and that determination is yet to be made, probably much later this year. The 2022 elections are going to be run on this map, so I'm all in and campaigning. But I think an independent redistricting commission can prevent this from ever happening again. And they are successful in the 4 counties that have them. And I hope that the citizenry of San Luis Obispo County strongly embraces that concept.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Dr. Jones, would you like me to repeat the question?
I don't think you need to. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Currently, the supervisors are tasked with redistricting after each census is complete. I would not pass this responsibility onto a group of people who are not elected by their constituents. Redistricting needs to be consistent with the Fair Maps Act of California and can be challenged in court. This current challenges has been before 3 judges. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Mr. Whitworth, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, you do not have to do that.
Okay.
I believe that I disagree with Mr. Gibson 100%. And basically, we are the Board of Supervisors are the people who are elected, as was stated earlier, and they are by far the best choice to determine redistricting. And I think they did a good job, and I think that it's fair. It's not fair to everybody, but nothing is. But I think that this redrawing of the new districts is going to work out well, and we'll see in the future that it's best for the county.
Thank you, Mr. Whitworth. Mr. Oslin.
Yes, I do not believe an independent commission should be drawing our maps. And the reason for that is we elect folks to be our elected officials, and they should be doing it. Number one. Number two is, if you look at our assembly district, once again, it was done by an independent commission, which is now put that district from Half Moon Bay along the coast through Santa Cruz, Monterey, down our coast with very little inland folks. So I don't think those folks had a great understanding of the area and what it means to do redistricting. So I do not support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oslin. Okay, the next question, and we'll have Dr. Jones, you'll answer first. Our county has limited affordable housing available to purchase or rent. What would you do as a supervisor to improve the situation for people working in this county?
Affordable housing is an important issue for District 2. Part of the problem is the planning department process. It often takes 2 years or more to get a project approved. Applicants of even simple projects often find it necessary to hire expensive planning agents to navigate their projects through the process. This adds cost to the construction of homes. This cost is passed on to the home buyers. When elected, I will work with the planning department management to streamline this process to make it faster, better, and cheaper. As a chairman of the Templeton Advisory Group, I've had a chance to review many projects, including excellent projects of affordable housing presented by the People's Self-Help Housing Group. The last one we looked at, we approved in Templeton without any recommendations for any modifications. Yes, we need affordable housing. It's a critical need in our community. Thank you.
Dr. Jones. Mr. Whitworth.
Well, my thought, affordable housing is a issue that's really statewide, and in particular in this area. Housing prices are extremely high. People want to come here, as we all know. That's why we're here. You have less product, and so even if the last year things have gone drastically, and I see them continuing to go up. So I wish I could offer a more rosy picture, but we have to be realistic. Now, I will agree that we do need to build more houses here, and if you want to call them affordable. But one of the problems is that, and with my contracting building background, I understand plan processing and how that works. And it's on everybody's defense when you are putting in a lot of different things. Plan checkers have to follow their rules, and it's a difficult job. However, we have a lot of there's a lot of blockage in the process right now in the planning. I've talked to a few people, more than a few, that are very frustrated with the fact that they can't get plans through. Builders who are here, that legitimate good people, are having problems with fees, and fees are very, very expensive. And so one of the things that they talk about, offering some taxes through the county that will help people. It ultimately comes down to, whenever you build something, somebody has to pay for it. So when you add all these regulations, which are the problem, too many regulations and too much, now you just drive the price up. So one of the places we could do that is in the county.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Mr. Oslin.
Thank you. Affordable housing is a complex issue. We need a lot more of it. How you achieve it is you get rid of fees that increase the cost to build. You get rid of some regulation. You attract outside investment. You have to have more head of household jobs for the economic growth of the area. So you have places for your employees to stay, buy, or rent. And you increase inventory. So without doing that, you're not making progress in an area that everybody wants to live in. So the County Board of Supervisors just got rid of one of their fees for extra square footage. I'm in favor of that because I think that will help outside investors start building again, and we can build more houses, which will attract more businesses to have better housing for folks that live here. One of the reasons I live in the North County is I couldn't afford South County and the coast as a kid growing up. Now you can't afford the county. It's just one of the ways that we can fix our housing shortages. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oslin. Mr. Gibson.
Thank you. My opponents speak in talking points and generalities off of prepared text that we've heard many, many times before. Everybody likes to complain about the time it takes to get through the planning process. And yeah, I understand the process. Can be frustrating for some. But let me get real plain with you here. The fees that are charged by the county to process plans are not the source of our affordability problem. We detailed that when we had a discussion about the inclusionary housing fee, and the affordability problem sorts out like this. The median house income in this county can afford a house of about $500,000. The median home price is $800,000. So that is the $300,000 affordability problem. County fees fully loaded are no more than 27,000 of those dollars. So sure, we can cut fees. Cutting the inclusionary housing fee, which is applied to mega mansions for the most part, and was generating $800,000 or is generating $800,000 a year that we can invest with people's self-help project, that is not killing the affordable housing market here. It is the incredible demand that we have. And so for living here, so what we have to do is concentrate on what we know works, which is investing in affordable housing development.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Our next question, Mr. Whitford, Mr. Whitworth, you're up first. The Board of Supervisors has proposed that San Luis Obispo County become a charter county for the purpose of filling vacancies on the board and a county-wide elected positions through special election. Do you support this proposal to make San Luis Obispo a charter county?
Yes, I very much in favor of that. A charter county is basically home rule, and it's an excellent way for us to control what we do on our own county. There are 13 charter counties right now in the state of California of the 58 counties. One of them being, the oldest is Los Angeles, which is 1911, San Diego, San Francisco. And so what this allows you to do is control what happens in your own county. And a couple of the issues involved basically, which I know some of the supervisors are not in favor of, is if there's a vacant position, how that is handled. And I'm in favor of how that would work out is the basically anything over a year would be there would be a vote if a supervisor were to leave. If it was less than a year, then they would that would be we would appoint the supervisors could appoint somebody. And also the issue of okay. So, anyways, I do support it 100%.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oslin.
Yes, I absolutely support the charter. And the reason I do is I think we should be electing any of our elected officials and not having appointed positions from the state. It's up to the voters, no different than our supervisor, our county clerk. I think it's a great way to do what's fair. There's less risk involved in having somebody with agenda being appointed. So I absolutely believe in having a charter county for elections and replacing positions if somebody was to leave office, die in office, or be removed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gibson.
Thank you. So let's be clear. First off, the question of whether we become a charter county or not that will depend on a vote of the registered voters in this county when a particular proposal is put before them, and that appears to be in this coming November. What we really need to look at is what is the exact nature of this proposal, and the one that the board majority is pushing through has some serious flaws in it. It sounds very democratic that a vacant position would be put out to be determined by a vote of the electorate. Until you look at filling a supervisor's district, supervisor vacancy, and realize that those districts have been gerrymandered. So as the Tribune editorial observed recently, that really the proposal that's moving forward as it is right now is an effort to lock in the power grab that the board majority has been working on through a number of steps, including redistricting in recent months and years. That was why I brought forward the idea of an independent redistricting commission. If the districts are fair, then it's a worthy consideration for having elections to fill vacancies. There is the question of how long you leave a position vacant. I think a year is too long, but in the end, the voters get to decide on that. And I know they'll take a careful look at what this board majority is trying to push through.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Dr. Jones.
Currently, as has already been said, vacated elected positions are filled either by the governor or by the Board of Supervisors with appointments. Recently at the Board of Supervisors meeting, a process was begun to allow voters to decide in November if the county will remain a general law county governed by the California government code or become a charter county with one unique law, a mandate to have voters elect all replacement office holders in case of a vacant seat. I believe elected officials better represent us than appointed ones. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we're going to switch over here to some health-related questions. Mr. Oslin, you're up first. Does San Luis Obispo County have adequate facilities and programs to treat mental illness? What would you propose to improve the situation?
Well, we don't have enough funding and enough facilities for mental health and healthcare at the moment. Newsom's CARE Act is a great idea, but that needs to go forward. We used to use the jails for folks that were addicted and had addicted to drugs, and they could sober up, get help if they wanted it while they were in jail. And we don't have that any longer because we have Prop 47 barriers. We need to increase Medi-Cal reimbursement rates for doctors. That would attract more doctors to our area because we don't have enough doctors in our area, or nurses for that matter, for them to practice here. And it would lower some of the cost of living that way. So those are some of the things that we could do for mental health and increase it. And it does tie into homelessness as well. A lot of folks have mental health issues that are living on the streets, that are unhoused, and we need to do a better job of that, getting them the help that they need with those that want the help. Some don't, and that's where the governor's plan comes into play. And I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gibson.
Thank you. There is no doubt that we need to build new mental health capacity in this county. That is both an expansion of our existing programs and the construction of the right kinds of facilities in which that care can be provided. We are behind the curve as a society and as a government in taking care of the mental health of our residents. And that's a decay that started, a dismantlement of the mental health system started 60 years ago, back in the 60s. But now we are seeing funding increasing, and we absolutely have to take advantage of that. That's going to require new buildings, inpatient facilities. There are limitations on that. I've seen a very innovative program in Los Angeles where they've gotten around some of the very burdensome federal regulations by building smaller units that can be independently managed. That is an opportunity that we should take advantage of. The governor's care court proposal is a concept at this point, and that was the call that I was on, meeting with some senior administration officials and supervisors from all over the state just before we joined this forum. We need to spell out the details. We need to be talking to the courts. We need to be sure that if that goes forward, counties are given the resources we need to build the housing and to hire the professionals and to develop the workforce that we're going to need to make that actually work.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Dr. Jones.
As a medically trained physician and with experience in healthcare management, as I mentioned earlier, on the board of a large hospital, I think that I'm ideal for working with the county behavioral health and helping them come up with better solutions. It's very important to me that mental health has adequate funding. Mental health, drug addiction, and alcoholism are significant factors in our ability to help our homeless neighbors. Certainly, there's other things mental health can do as well, but homelessness among people who are handicapped with addiction and mental health is a huge problem for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitworth.
Well, the mental health issue ties into everything, basically two And I had the opportunity to interview Sheriff Parkinson about 2 weeks ago, and I asked him what are the two most important things that he needs to help him be a good sheriff. And he said the first thing is we have to build, or we need a facility to treat these folks. He says when we put them in jail and we let them back out the same day or the next day, they go back out in the streets and nothing happens. And so I'm aware of the Templeton, they were looking at building a 90-bed facility in Templeton, and that got kind of sidetracked, but there's still a possibility. But we need to treat these people. And Sheriff Parkinson said the issue is with AB 47, the same people, they know who a lot of these folks are that are really the offenders. Actually, even a couple of the shooters, they knew who they were in the recent shootings that we had. So, but these people need to be institutionalized, and it didn't happen. So even as a citizen, I'm going to work very, very hard to get something on the board so that we can build or use something we already have in place, but we have to be able to make these people accountable and get them off the streets.
Thank you.
And I will work hard to make that happen.
Thank you. Okay, so this issue came up a little bit in some of the previous answers, but the next question is, and Mr. Gibson, you'll be first. What short-term and long-term ideas would you propose to deal with the homelessness crisis in our county?
Well, I recently actually led on getting one of the most important short-term solutions in place, and that's the safe parking program. In Los Osos, we had somewhere between 50 and 60 vehicles, either permanently or overnight, camping on Palisades Avenue, which is the street that has the library, the community center, the community park, a church. It's the civic center of Los Osos. The folks were living there in desperate situations of poor sanitation, and the impacts that they were causing were becoming unacceptable to the community. So I led the effort that pushed county staff to open a safe parking program on Kansas Avenue, which is just off Highway 1 outside San Luis Obispo. Has a transit stop there. That facility has room now, and every night we house upwards of 50 vehicles. We provide the folks who live there showers, toilets, and services to get them on a path to permanent housing. That's just the start. We need to do a similar kind of program for folks who are camped in tents. And beyond that, we need to build the transitional housing that will bring services wrapped around folks so that they can become successful and eventually enter housing that they can afford, which is another set of housing products that this county needs to lead on building. So there's a full spectrum that we need to address the specific needs of every individual who finds themselves homeless.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Dr. Jones.
What I do know is the measures we've been doing for the last 15 years are not working. We have more homeless now than ever. I care deeply about our neighbors that are homeless. Homelessness is a multifactorial problem that includes mental health, issues of drug and alcohol addiction, and sometimes economic circumstances related to job loss and domestic disruptions. For some, all that is needed is housing, and those folks are the easiest to help. Our neighbors who are handicapped with drug addiction and mental health disorders require much more help. The countywide homeless management information system hopefully will provide us with information so we know what works and what does not work. We need to harvest the data from this information system. I will work with the dedicated people of the Social Service Department of our county to improve our approach in caring for these folks. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitworth?
Well, the short-term issues right now are pretty much in place. We have ECHO. I donate quite a bit to them, and I think they do a good job. There's other things, and even Mr. Gibson, I give him a plus for what he's some of the things that he's worked on for the parking issues. But I have a kind of an interesting thing. I talked to my son today, and he's very concerned about this. And so here's something I want to throw out to everybody. If you Higera and Beebe Street, I go over there because I do business over there by McCarthy, and there's a park over there, and they have those teeny little mobile houses. I mean, they're mini houses, and there's homeless people parked there. And so my son was thinking, I was thinking a good idea that these units, that we would develop some of these units in areas like that, but even go further, and we would, how about a lot of these homeless folks now are not mentally ill and they want a place to live, so that we would do a community garden. We would get these people involved to work together and make a clean place that they could live, and that would be a start. So I'm looking for solutions, and I think we could build on some of these things, because many of the homeless folks are folks. I mean, they're people just like us that had jobs, and they lost those things. They lost their homes, and these are the folks that can help build this community and make it something better than what it is. But at least we got to try something.
Thank you, Mr. Whitworth. Mr. Oslin?
So homelessness is definitely a complex issue, as we all know. We have been doing the same thing for a very long time. We need to change what we're doing and make things different. We spend about $70,000 per unhoused individual per year. We need to reduce that number and make things work. And I think the first thing you start with is families that are about to lose their home, whether it's rent or whether it's their house, that are actually working, and folks of that nature. Inflation's high as can be right now. Gas prices are up. Some of these folks cannot afford to drive to work, and now we're going to throw them out of a house. We need to stop the problem first, and then we can deal with the ones that are still unhoused and go from there. ECHO does a fantastic job getting people back on their feet, back into housing, back into jobs. They're a phenomenal organization that seems to be working. We need to be addressing it in multiple ways to get it better. And I'm not sure that going down the same path we've been going down the last 15 years is the answer. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we're going to switch gears, and we're going to environment-related questions. Dr. Jones, you're first. First question is, do you support the proposed wind energy project for waters off the Central Coast? Why or why not?
Wind energy is an important component of our non-carbon related energy. I do not favor offshore wind because it interferes with the fishing industry and the jobs related to that industry. I also believe that my constituents do not want to look on windmills when they view the ocean. I do, however, believe that wind turbines located in areas with minimal population is a viable option for electrical production. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitworth?
I tend to favor any type of alternate energy. I think that using everything we have, wind, solar, whatever we can come up with is a good idea. Now, specifically the one that they want to put off of Morro Bay and make it one of the biggest battery storage facilities in the world is something that to say yes or no right now, I tend to lean towards it, but we have to look at the big picture of what that really is about. And one of the things that folks that have these either whether it be cars or these batteries the disposal of them, they're highly toxic. And if you're looking at how do we do that, so there's another part of that end game that we have to take a look at. But my thought is I look at all sources of alternate energy, and I think combined, that's a good way for us to go.
Thank you, Mr. Whitworth. Mr. Oslin.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Absolutely. Do you support the proposed wind energy project for the waters off the Central Coast? Why or why not?
My answer is I would support it if it was far enough off the coast to where it does not affect the view of any of our residents, first and foremost. Secondly, if our fishing industry would agree to it, because we don't want to ruin our fishing industry around here, because then that's one more industry that we've taken out. Going a little bit further, I would support any form of energy whatsoever that is green and produces energy. We need it in every format that we can, and wind definitely has its value, but you don't want to see it out your window. So that's a beautiful thing, and we're going to need every ounce of energy that we can to sustain where we live in the state of California. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gibson.
Thank you. I am strongly supportive of the offshore wind projects, and it's interesting to hear a couple of my opponents raise concerns about the aesthetics. I think we got to recalibrate what we think is aesthetic. You know, we've got a rapidly warming planet. A recent report suggests a crisis looming, and I'm not a guy to be overly hyped up, but this is serious. So we've got to decide whether seeing the tips of a few turbines 25 miles offshore is really that aesthetically displeasing when we look at the absolute critical need to increase our renewable energy supplies. This wind project will be good for our local economy, and the fishing industry has been deeply consulted on this. There are wind companies that are working with them on community benefit agreements. And I think there are many things about how those wind turbines are installed that can mitigate a lot of the concerns of the fishing industry. But overall, the need to push forward on this is just at the top of the list. You know, the other thing that some people raise are the environmental impacts, and those are being extensively studied. It looks to me that where the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management has cited the particular call area, where 3 gigawatts, which is more than Diablo Canyon, is going to fit the needs of both the environment and the fishing industry. And I think it's a thing that absolutely should go forward.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Okay, Mr. Whitworth, you're up for this question first. How would you counter the impact of tourism with the needs of residents and the need to protect the environment?
I'm sorry, is that for me, Mr. Whitworth?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I think that to balance that, it's already pretty well, I want to say, balanced itself. I mean, we need tourism it creates jobs. We have a lovely place, so we're sharing our beautiful community with other folks. And residential folks, some of the issues, I would be thinking of Airbnbs and how that might affect residential folks. But for the most part, I think tourism, where people come in, they spend their money here. It creates jobs for us. And for the most part, these are pleasant people. They're good people. And so I think it's a real win-win for everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Whitworth. Mr. Oslin.
Yes, thank you. It's all about balance. You have to have a variety of things, whether it's agriculture, whether it's tourism. And for the environment, it all works together, but you have to have diverse economic value for everything. When you take the environmental end of things, deliver, economically and environmental, both work hand in hand and deliver jobs, good paying jobs. We need to be more green, absolutely. And with tourism, it brings economic value to our county. And what like Paso Robles has done and Atascadero has done, you have centers now and people are going there rather than driving all around the county as much. So it does help with traffic. More people can ride bikes and get around. So yeah, it's just about balance when it comes to both tourism and the environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gibson.
I would actually turn the premise of that question around. The fact that we have taken great care to protect our environment is the core of our visitor serving economy. Folks come here because our environment is protected. And I've been proud over my time in office and long before to be involved in land conservation efforts that have protected over 20 miles of the
beach
county's coastline. In the latest one was the acquisition of the much loved dog beach that lies between the north end of Morro Bay and the south end of Cayucas. Those kinds, and Estero Bluffs State Park, 3.5 miles of coastline above Cayucas, and the 18 miles of the Hearst Ranch Conservation Project. Those are the things that bring tourists here, along with our exquisite wine country, both the scenery and the product they produce. That's the core of our tourist economy. We have work to do, particularly in the North County, and that's one reason I'm excited to be, have District 2 extend into North County. We need to solve the water issues in North County so that our wine industry can continue to flourish. So that's really high on my list and very consistent with the environmental protections that I have championed for 25 years that I've been involved in public issues in this county.
Thank you. Dr. Jones.
Tourism is an essential part of our economy. People who come to our county, visit, spend millions of dollars each year supporting our businesses and maintaining our jobs. Pre-pandemic, tourism labor force was more than 18,000 people in our county. Tourism attractions in our county include our beautiful shoreline, vineyards, the sand dunes. People come for these attractions, eat in our restaurants, purchase and stay in our hotels. The environmental impact of our tourism industry is small compared to its benefits. Some are concerned about trash left on our beaches and on our roadways, traffic congestion, and late night noise. Improved code enforcement of vacation rental and camping ordinances would mitigate some of the problems we face. Code enforcement, like much of our law enforcement, is understaffed, and improving the staffing of code enforcement will mitigate some of these problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next question, Mr. Oslin, you're up first. Climate change and drought pose a serious threat to our water resources, especially our groundwater, according to a new study. What actions should the Board of Supervisors propose to put the county on a more sustainable course?
Well, for water, number one, we should be taking 100% of our allocation from Lake Nacimiento. And if we were to take our extra water and run it over the dam at Lake Margarita and it flew down the Salinas River, it would refill the basin, recharge the basin all the way down, and even lessen the amount of water that would come out of Nacimiento or San Antonio going to the farmers in Monterey County, and it would help with salt intrusion year round. That would help North County right away. These cell plants, we need them. We need to be operational on the coast. Cambria is in trouble on water. South County is in trouble. We're about 30% at Lake Lopez right now on water. When we hit the 10% mark, our farmers in our ag world down south has no water rights left until the lake is back up. So we need to be doing things that we can. Our county did sign an MOU agreement with Diablo Canyon. We need to be exploring that now and trying to do a utilization of that desal plant to help South County. We need to build more desal plants, and conservation does come into play as well. But I think most people around here do conserve plenty of water. That's just a few things that I could come up with in this short time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oslin. Mr. Gibson.
We need to get first and foremost serious about our efforts under the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act process that we have going in several of our county basins. SGMA, as we call it, is a state level requirement that we bring our groundwater basins into balance. And frankly, the leadership from the North County Supervisors has been lacking as we look at the plan that's been put forward for the Paso Robles groundwater basin. It's being picked apart by the state right now. It has been found to be incomplete. And when I read it, it was clear that the implementation chapter was incredibly weak. Not even so much as getting a program together to meter the extractions from the major wells in the basin, which is going to be key to actually managing this resource. You know, in contrast, I've been working in the Los Osos groundwater basin for the entire time that I've been in office. And with the construction of the sewer plant, we have the resource of recycled water that we're putting to good use. We have a plan. We are seeing the results of active management. Yeah, we have a ways to go, and we have a ways to go to convince the Coastal Commission, but I'm confident that we are going to be able to demonstrate the kind of sustainability in a community that depends entirely on groundwater, because we actually focused and had some hard discussions and made some plans and executed on those plans.
Thank you. Dr. Jones.
The original question was about climate change and water together. Is that correct?
Right. I'll just reread it for you because it was kind of a long one. It says climate change and drought pose a serious threat to our water resources, especially our groundwater, according to a new study. What actions should the Board of Supervisors propose to put the county on a more sustainable course?
Those that are concerned about climate change currently are focused on carbon dioxide emissions. Recently, the Board of Supervisors passed a motion with one opposing vote to ask the governor to keep Diablo Canyon electrical generation facility open. This facility has been producing clean, safe energy since 1985 without burning carbon. It produces 8 to 10% of California's electricity. This is a baseline facility that can generate electricity when the wind's not blowing and the sun's not shining. As we move away from a carbon-based energy source, we will need its electricity. Diablo needs to remain open to provide electricity, jobs, and tax support. At Diablo, according to the Stanford MIT study, excess electricity generated there can run desalination using reverse osmosis. It costs less than $1 to produce a cubic meter of water. That's about 264 gallons. I believe that part of our water solution, particularly in the South County, is desalination from the Diablo Canyon facility. I also believe that we have to understand that our water resource is a resource that we all need, and we have to deal with it in a fair and equitable way. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. Mr. Whitworth.
Well, as of today's Tribune, we all know that we have had an overdrafting problem, and for the last 10 years, we've had an overdrafting problem. And there's a lot of reasons why. Drought, less rain, we go through these cycles, how we capture water, how we use what we do have, who gets what we do have. And so I think one of the things that we have, the Board of Supervisors right now, they have developed a groundwater sustainability plan and if numbers are correct, the county controls about 61% of that water, and then some of the other entities, there are 5 other entities that basically are involved in this groundwater sustainability plan. And so if the Board of Supervisors works together, and one of the things we can look at is how we can be more efficient? How do we water? There are different technologies that we can use less water, and so how do we go about doing that? But the Board of Supervisors, with this groundwater sustainability plan, can go forward and correct and mitigate many of these problems. But overdrafting and drought, it's going to take good management, and I think that if we all work together, that's my emphasis, we all work together, the big water users, some of the smaller folks, and we come up with a program that's fair and equitable, and everybody leaves something on the table, everybody takes something home. I think that we can mitigate these issues, and we can make it workable.
Thank you, Mr. Whitworth. Well, we're going to stick on the topic of water. Mr. Gibson, you're first. What do you think should be done to balance the water needs of farmers, vintners, with those of the general population and tourists?
Well, everybody deserves a fair access to the benefits of this shared resource. And so that's really at the heart of the groundwater sustainability plans that are being put forward in Paso Robles, in the San Luis Obispo Valley, which we often call the Edna Valley, and in other basins. The situation in Los Osos is a little different in that it's under adjudication of the court, but the principle is exactly the same. That when we look at the management of a shared resource that is the groundwater, we need to be sure that everybody can benefit. That's going to require, first and foremost, bringing the extractions into balance with the supply. And so in order to do that, we're going to need to fund projects to increase supply. In Paso Robles, there's nacimiento water, potentially state water, recycled water from the city of Paso Robles. We have to decide who is going to pay for these projects. It's got to be borne by the beneficiaries, and exactly how is that resource, those increased supply is going to benefit the resource. On the flip side, we're going to have to do conservation, and that's going to require some effort on the agricultural front. The really interesting thing that I'm involved in now is seeing ag technology really start to blossom in this county. It is a growth area, and I think there's a lot of potential for further conservation of agricultural water that will eventually get the balance right so everyone can benefit.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Dr. Jones.
Water is an important issue for all of us, and as has already been said, it's a shared resource that has to be fair and equitably managed. I believe that water banking in our groundwater aquifers could devastate small-scale farmers in some small communities in our county. I do not support water banking in underground aquifers. Stored water in above-ground reservoirs needs to be an essential part of our water plan. Desalination, as I mentioned just a few moments ago, is a good use of excess water from Diablo Canyon Nuclear Power Electrical Generation Facility when the wind's blowing and the sun's shining and we don't need the extra energy. Less than $1 for 264 gallons is an equitable value that could be used for homeowners and residential use. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitworth.
Well, I would like to start out with, according to the state constitution of California, which is actually stronger in many ways for citizens than the U.S. Constitution, it's the primary right of the person that owns a particular piece of land, say for an acre, that they own all the water rights for that land. And then you get into, that's the big ones also. So if that is true, then those with bigger pieces of land will get more water. But when you start getting into water banking now, which means that those that have more resources, more money, can take away that primary position that person has to a state constitution goes away. So I feel very strongly that we have to honor that, and as I've said earlier, as we divide up this water, and it's a very, very, I hate the word complex, but it's kind of like, it's not like a bathtub where all the water's even. You've got sand traps, you've got places there it's dry, you have places so not everybody can pump equally. So that is something that I feel strongly about, and we have to, as we go forward, it has to be fair and equitable for everybody. And I feel that as we go forward, we can work these things out and go forward. As far as desal, I tend to disagree a
Mr.
little
Whitworth,
bit. I'm
your
sorry.
your time is up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Oslin.
So water is always a difficult issue. We need to be capturing as much water as we can, utilizing it in our county, keeping it here, not selling it, not pirating it, and keeping it in our county. We also haven't built any new storage facilities since the late 60s, early 70s here in San Luis County. We need to look into that. We're increasing storage capacity of some of our lakes or dams to hold more water for us as well. It's a balance with ag. It's a balance. It's not all about agriculture and grapes grabbing all the water. Population's growing. We have more hotels. We have more swimming pools. It's a balance of doing what we need to do to keep our water here and be utilizing everything we possibly can in conservation as well, not wasting it, which I think we do a pretty good job. I do know that we can recycle water, use that for irrigation on our trees, use that for other things that puts it back into the ground. No different than what Nacimiento water does when it goes downstream. It recharges the basin. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oslin. Okay, Dr. Jones, you're up for this next question first. Do you support the Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary? If not, why not?
The proposed Chumash Marine Sanctuary is an interesting it's an interesting use of words, because Chumash is in its name, even though it is not endorsed by any state or federally recognized Chumash tribe. This sanctuary has been opposed by commercial fishermen and could lead to significant loss of head of household incomes if it's approved among the fishermen. Proponents of the marine sanctuary claim that it's necessary to prevent offshore oil drilling, but offshore oil drilling requires onshore support facilities. People forget that in 1986, SLO County passed Measure A that requires that any onshore support facility for offshore oil drilling be approved by a 2/3 vote of our county citizens. It's highly unlikely that our citizens would approve such a facility by a 2/3 vote. I am opposed to the Chumash Marine Sanctuary. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitworth.
I tend to agree with the doctor. I'm not saying I'm opposed, and I would have to take a look at it a little more carefully. But I do feel that I tend to agree with his without going through it and stealing his good thoughts. But I think that's the direction I'm looking at.
Thank you. Mr. Oslin.
I am opposed to it for some of the reasons that the doctor stated, but other reasons is believe in local control, and I don't want to give up local control. One of the things that you need to take into consideration on the Chumash Marine Sanctuary is any of the creeks and streams that run into that area of the ocean end up out of our control, and the federal government will control those streams and creeks. And that's where it goes bad. It's already bad enough that we would have less area for our fishermen, but then we're giving up a lot of our local control on what we do with the water and our streams. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gibson.
I strongly support the Chumash National Marine Sanctuary, and the opposition to it has been filled with misinformation, and you've heard a lot of it repeated tonight. Dr. Jones asserts that it's going to ruin the fishing industry, when in fact it does not regulate fishing whatsoever. It does not. It simply is. There's other places where fishing is regulated, but the establishment of the Marine Sanctuary is not one of them. And I've long talked to the fishing industry about their chance to market their catch from a national marine sanctuary would be in their benefit. So it's not going to lose head of household jobs. In fact, it's going to create them. An economic study showed that would be a definite benefit to our tourist industry. Mr. Oslin is absolutely incorrect as to the regulation of our creeks and streams. The National Marine Sanctuary does not regulate creeks and streams. There are other federal agencies that do that. They are in place right now. The National Marine Fisheries Service, the Army Corps of Engineers, and those are the ones that actually are regulating our streams right now. And we don't lose local control because we don't control the portion of the ocean that the sanctuary influences. Our authority as a county stops at the mean high tide line. The state and federal waters that would be part of the National Marine Sanctuaries are beyond our control right now. It's a really beneficial thing for this county, and I hope that it gets designated.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Well, along these same lines, Mr. Whitworth, you're up first. Do you support offshore oil drilling in the waters off of our coast? Why or why not?
Well, offshore drilling has been there for a long, long time, and no one likes to look at those oil derricks that we see out there. They're up and down the coast everywhere. However, if I believe we have to go forward and get the oil that is there, but the main thing that I would emphasize is that it's done safely, and that we monitor that maybe more closely than we have in the past, because the oil spills, the one we had, I lived in Santa Barbara when that happened, that was a horrible, horrible thing. But to say that I do not support oil drilling, if done properly with the correct safety measures, then we go forward.
Thank you, Mr. Whitworth. Mr. Oslin.
I do not support offshore oil drilling. I do support onshore oil drilling. It creates jobs. We are the safest state, and the United States is the safest country in the world for drilling with our regulations. We should continue drilling out of Arroyo Grande. There's a big benefit for head of household jobs. There's also, if we were drilling more onshore right now, we would be probably having a lot less in the gas prices and not being reliant on foreign oil. So that's where I come from. Not mandating, we need to not go off our coastline though. Onshore is the way to go, and I say drill.
Thank you, Mr. Oslin. Mr. Gibson.
Thank you. I strongly oppose offshore oil drilling, as do a vast majority of our county residents and voters. It's a prime reason why I've supported the Chumash Marine Sanctuary, because that would de facto ban offshore oil. The reason is that offshore oil is a direct threat to our tourist industry, as we talked about before. I happened to be in high school in Santa Barbara when the oil spill occurred in 1969. And the disaster that started a movement for good reason. We're also in the transition away from fossil fuels. You look at the efforts and the fact now that we are seeing so many electric vehicles entering our roadways, and renewable energy generating our electricity shows us that the future is renewable energy and not fossil fuels. So that's why I strongly support the use of our oceans for offshore wind and oppose offshore oil.
Thank you. Dr. Jones. Did I lose you again? There you are. Oh, you're muted, Dr. Jones.
I will start over.
Okay.
I oppose offshore oil drilling. I think that it's a bit of a mute discussion because of the proposition I talked about earlier, Proposition A from 1986. I do support oil drilling in the inland areas, but I think that it should not be offshore. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, since we're talking about different energy sources, a question was, and we'll have Mr. Oslin, you will answer first. What other clean energy projects do you envision for this county?
Well, if we have water, we could do hydrogen, but that is relying on the rain. Battery off of solar. Wind farms far enough away. And, the D-cell plant makes a big difference out of Diablo as well. It's an energy source. It's already there. So keeping any type of energy that we can keep going makes sense. We have to keep the lights on somehow. And as technology advances, then we won't have as much need for oil and fossil fuels, so we can get more environmentally friendly. We're just not there yet. And as technology continues to go further, we will have different sources of energy. It could come from the ocean, it could come from water, it could come from wind, whatever it takes. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Gibson.
I think rooftop solar is a place where there's lots of potential to expand. Details to be worked out in exactly how net metering is handled by the CPUC, but that's an in the weeds question that would need some time to discuss. We missed an opportunity when our board majority refused to let us join the Community Choice Energy Project with 3CE out of Monterey County. That could have developed a stream of revenue that we could have used to improve the installation of rooftop solar in our county. Battery storage projects, absolutely. We've got one coming in Morro Bay. I've been talking to the city about that, although the county will not have land use authority there. But there are a couple of exciting battery projects in the developmental stages down in South County. All depends on where one has a tie to the grid. On the other side of that, we have the opportunity to do conservation. That's a form of finding new energy. If a house can run on less electricity or importantly less gas than it does right now, that's a savings. And we have set up something I worked very closely on, the renewable energy network of the tri-counties, 3C REN as we call it, which is a way of providing cost-effective energy retrofits to houses so that folks can save energy. That helps the bottom line as well.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Dr. Jones.
As I've said earlier in these discussions, I believe that onshore wind energy has great capacity. I also think that solar grids, huge grids on portions of the county that are not very densely populated would certainly help. I favor keeping Diablo open as a baseload facility. It still produces 8 to 10% of the state's electrical energy right now. Conservation, of course, is important. I think that the greatest breakthrough in conservation in the last few years has been LED lights. I think we need to encourage complete conversion to that type of lighting. I think that heat pumps carry some advantage in efficiency compared to other electrical heating. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitworth.
I think we've heard a lot of good ideas from everybody. This is one thing I think we all tend to agree upon. So my thought is every single source of energy that we can use, a combination of everything, solar, wind, even small wind. I looked at a small wind turbine. I live in a very high wind area, a small wind turbine that you could even put the bird issue, you can put a grate on it and you can use that. The desal is that we have that plant down there that we could use that. I feel very strongly about that. But the other thing that there's kind of an interesting new one, and maybe somebody else can comment on this. But they have a solar hydro project where they're figuring out how to, because the air carries a lot of moisture, and so using solar, there's a way to grab that moisture, and they're working on it right now. And so technology will help us. Conservation, Americans waste just about everything, folks. I hate to sound like a Grinch here, but we could conserve all of us, from food to just about everything we do. Technology, for example, you look at double glazed windows, insulation. When I built a house, I insulated all my interior walls, and in a hot day, I don't need my air conditioning. So technology, there's a lot we can do. We put all those things together, and I think we can come up with a solution that will help us all live better.
Thank you, Mr. Whitworth. Okay, Mr. Gibson, how does your experience with or knowledge of county government make you the best candidate to represent all of the citizens of District 2?
Well, in a little over 15 years in office, I have been involved in a large number of projects that made a big difference in the lives of our residents. You can start with the Los Osos sewer. After 35 years of controversy, we got that project done, and Los Osos is poised to move forward. In my time in office, we've seen 4 new branch libraries open in the 2nd District, including the branch in Atascadero, which opened at almost exactly the same time as the branch in Cambria. That was through cooperation with Supervisor Patterson at the time there. We've seen a couple of major bridge projects that occurred up in Cambria. The restoration of the Cayucas Pier, and coming soon, the restoration of the Cayucas Vets Hall, along with a lot of other infrastructure projects like bridges and other facilities. My experience allows me the deep knowledge of how county government works and an understanding of the necessity of relationships that build partnerships, because one person, one agency doesn't do these kinds of big things alone. And I've also been very watchful of the financial responsibility so that our monies are invested well and the impact on the ratepayers and the citizens of this county is minimized. So it is that extensive record of accomplishment that I'm primarily running on this time. Thank
you, Mr. Gibson. Dr. Jones.
I think that my experience on the Templeton Area Advisory Group has allowed me to understand a lot about the issues that face our county, specifically land use and water issues, because that's what mostly comes up before our board. I've had a chance as the chairman of that group to talk to various people in our community, business owners, farm owners, ranchers, And I think I do understand their concerns, and I think that I can represent them quite well. I think that this experience has also given me an understanding of the ordinances, specifically Title 22 and Title 21, and procedures of the county. My experience that I mentioned earlier, being on the board of a large nonprofit hospital that served a population that's greater than our county and had more employees than our county, has taught me a lot about dealing with competing agendas and managing important issues that have to be compromised to get a solution. I think that experience has more than prepared me to be an effective supervisor for our county.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. Mr. Whitworth.
Well, I feel my proven past leadership skills, being new as holding a county office, my experience as a building contractor, my experience in education, understanding how much of the system works, my leadership skills, my core values, which would be common sense solutions, spend our money wisely, fewer regulations, fiercely fighting for our water to keep it in our county and not let it leave, which we didn't get into that, but that's also a major issue. And then my single most, I think, important thing is, as well as being a leader, but I feel I can communicate and bring everybody together, because one of the things that's on the board that we have right now is this divisiveness, us against them, and we have to change that. And nobody in this community wants a board of supervisors that is tussling over their identity as progressives, or conservatives, whatever. They want to get things done. And as a Marine Corps officer and a small business owner, I have a very successful business owner. I get things done. I execute. I know how to make things happen, and I feel I could bring a fresh breath of air. And I'm a good listener. I will talk to people, and my decisions will be based fairly on all parties concerned. And I thank you for the opportunity to serve as your District 2 supervisor.
Thank you, Mr. Whitworth. Mr. Oslin.
Yes, so I've worked with numerous agencies, federal, state, and local agencies over the years. When I did the special event world, I had to coordinate agencies that don't like to talk to each other. I've worked with almost 60 agencies at any given time doing triathlons, marathons, races, motorcades, for presidentials. I've done a lot of this with a lot of agencies. I have experience in working with them, building trust, and getting things done. That's the first thing of experience. Secondly, especially the last few years, 2 years with the pandemic, I have helped several small businesses maneuver the red tape to stay in business and survive the pandemic. I've been a mentor to several businesses that are successful and still going. I've worked with city government. I'm on the advisory board for SLOCOG. I understand how a lot of these things work. I'm not for raising taxes that have been said on the Board of Supervisors meeting. And that's how you get trust, and that's how you work with people. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, believe it or not, you have answered 13 questions, so I have one left. And hopefully, Ann, our timer's listening, because I would really like to give each of you 2 minutes to answer this final question. And Dr. Jones, you're up first. And the question is, if elected, what would be your top priorities for District 2?
My top priorities for District 2 would be fully funding law enforcement and fire protection, supporting jobs, small business, tourism, and agriculture, streamlining the planning department process, securing parental control of their children's education and health choices, and keeping Diablo open and functioning to supply energy, jobs, and tax dollars to our county. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. Mr. Whitworth.
This is a tough one because there's so many that are so close. But I would have to say right now, keeping our businesses open and helping them go forward closely with building issues, water. This is a tough one to say the specific one. They're all very important, and I will work on all those different issues to be fair and go forward.
Thank you. Mr. Oslin.
I'm definitely focused on infrastructure, laser focused on the economy and jobs. And that's the first place that I would start, making things more efficient, easier to maneuver, create jobs, create head of household jobs, keep and maintain our jobs on the Central Coast, whether it's the oil fields or Diablo, and continue from there. The other thing that I would be focused on in creating jobs is the spaceport in Paso. That's going to bring economic value to our county as a whole. Companies are going to want to come here. We're going to have plenty of technology advancing, and also seeing through that broadband is reliable and comes through our county with all the funding that is out there at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gibson.
Well, it's interesting to hear the other three gentlemen list their issues of interest, because that's not what I'm hearing as I knock on doors. The number one thing I hear people concerned about right now is homelessness. We have a disgraceful situation on our city and county streets with residents living in absolute misery. And as a society and as a government, we are been behind the curve in addressing that pressing issue. We finally are getting funds in quantities adequate to start making a difference here. And that's something that I really want to concentrate on. This is a huge problem because everyone who finds themselves homeless has a specific story. These are all individuals. And there are a raft of needs that need to be taken care of. Yes, mental health care, we need to improve that. Yes, addiction treatment absolutely needs to be strengthened. I put that right up with the mental health care. There are a whole bunch of other issues too. We have an unconscionable number of senior citizens who find themselves living in vehicles because they're on fixed income and rents have gone up. We need to start building houses that people can get into. But along the spectrum of dealing with homelessness, we have to move from those who are living in tents to get them in a place where they have proper shelter and sanitation, all the way through the transitional housing to the permanent housing. One of the other things that I think is really important is to strengthen our childcare system. And through the American Rescue Act plan funding, we have $3 million set aside. I've been working for years as a member of the First Five Commission to strengthen childcare in this county. That's going to make a huge difference in the lives of children, of their families, and with the ability to then mobilize the workforce, in particular women, we're going to see an economic benefit to that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. So this brings us to the point of your closing comments. A minute and a half, I think, is reasonable. And we're going to change the order from our opening statements. So I'll have Mr. Whitworth go first for his closing statement.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for you folks that have put this on. It's professional, excellent. We've gotten a lot, we've said a lot to each other. We've been very respectful, which I think is extremely important in this today's world of divisiveness. So again, I feel that this county is a wonderful place to live. I think the Board of Supervisors has done many good things, and we also know, like anything, there is a lot of room for improvement. So I would like to say that I would bring the leadership skills, I would bring the dedication and the knowledge to go forward. And as a new guy, I would have a lot to learn. I've done a lot of research on the water issues, and I'm learning about everything. Before I make any decision as a Board of Supervisors member, I would do my homework. I would talk to people. I would find out what the issues really are, and then I would vote based on what my constituency, what the folks out there really want and need. And we know that it's a challenge, but and I feel like I have the strength, the power, and the dedication to go forward. And I thank you again for the opportunity to present my my leadership skills, and I look forward to being your next District 2 Supervisor.
Thank you, Mr. Whitworth. Dr. Jones.
I too want to thank you for putting on a great forum today, and thank the other candidates for being so respectful of each other. I want to bring integrity, transparency, and efficiency to our county government. I have office hours at Republican Party headquarters in Atascadero on Fridays from 2 to 4. You all are invited. Check out my website, jonesforsupervisor.com. I am Dr. Bruce Jones, the right Bruce for District 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. Mr. Gibson.
Yes, many thanks to the Cambria Chamber of Commerce and the League for facilitating this, in fact, in my experience, unique forum in the virtual world. It's been a pleasure. You know, in this discussion, you've heard about our many complex challenges, and it's nearly impossible to do any justice to them when you're constrained to 90-second answers. But I hope you've listened to the answers that you've heard from all four of us tonight and compared them. You know, we heard an argument that in essence was that inexperience was a virtue. I flatly disagree with that. In these incredibly challenging times, with the breadth of opportunity we had in front of us, experience is a necessity. And that's what I'm bringing to this job, what I have brought to this job for the past 15 years. It gives me a deep knowledge of county government and a wide set of relationships at all levels of government that are going to be key to getting things done. So I run on my record of accomplishment, which should be clear indication of what lies in the future of this county. We can build a bright future working together, and I am honored to ask for your vote on or before June 7th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Mr. Oslin.
I also would like to thank the League of Women Voters and the Cambria Chamber. I think this was a fabulous program tonight. So my closing statement is this: I'm a successful business owner. That's my experience. A lot of the problems that we have currently in our county, we've had a career politician going for 15 plus years now, and some things are worse. We need to address inflation, housing, safety as quick as we can, mental health, the homeless population, water issues that have started to get worse in this county and not better over the last few years. When you have somebody in office for as long as this person's been in office, which is Mr. Gibson, and things aren't getting better, it's time for a change. Based on that, I do agree with Mr. Gibson that I hope to get your vote on or before June 7th. Thank you very much for hosting this event.
Thank you, Mr. Oslin. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your participation in this. And it's safe for me to speak on behalf of the community, how grateful that we are that you're willing to step up to serve, because it's not an easy job. I do want to do a shout out to Mel McCulloch, the president of the Cambria Chamber, and Lori Ann Schwenk, who is the executive director, because she fielded all of the questions for us. I appreciate the league's volunteers. And I want to let you know that this webinar will be available to view in a few days. It will be available on the Cambria Chamber of Commerce website, as well as the League of Women Voter websites, and it will be uploaded to our Facebook Live. So please, everyone, vote on or before June 7th. It's really important, and thank you.